All right, so guys, we put this presentation together in a couple of reasons here. First of all, we wanted to bring something different, something that's maybe a little bit more timely as far as, people go into the end of the years, and this is really interesting. I always feel like, when people say they had a New Year's resolution and they've already dropped it and failed by the second week in January, normally, and I've done that many times in my life, and I've done that with many other goals, normally what that means is you set the goal wrong. And, what you often do is come up with this ideal of who you want to be, what you want to do, and you try to run to it as fast as possible. And what we learned when we put all three of these together is that's not always the best answer. And most likely, I'm guessing for any of you guys, if you go into 2024 and you're a goal setter, you're going to have it a little bit in each of these categories simply because these are such important things. I mean, when you think about it, your health is priceless. Your wealth is very important, and time is an incredibly limited resource that you can never get more of. So what better way can, at least in my mind, we go into 24 than to say, I want to use my time well this year. I want to make sure I make good financial decisions, and I want to do some things that help either preserve or improve my health. So let's jump in here, and believe it or not, there is a strong correlation between these all that we'll get to as we start talking about how they work together. So, the agenda here, and y'all might think this first one's funny until I put it up, but define these words. Second, how do they work together? Third, what are some strategies to optimize these resources, both the rest of the year, if that still is important to you, and in the coming years? So let's jump into this. And certainly for questions, if y'all have some, don't feel bad either putting them in chat, which Juliana will watch, or just interrupt me, quite frankly. The one thing I really don't like about these virtual webinars versus in person is people feel rude when they interrupt, but I think that it's not really interrupting, in my opinion, that it's making the presentation more interactive and interesting. So, all right, first of all, let's go through the definitions, because until you define something, it's hard to really know what it is. Time is the only definition I have here that I think is 100% correct. And we'll get to why that is in a second here. But with time, continued progress of existence and events in the past, present, and future regarded as a whole. That's the Webster definition. And if you think about it, that makes sense. What time are you going to be at this place? What time is it right now? When did you do this in the past type thing? A great example on that, whether you were born in 1954 or 1955 can make a huge difference in your Social Security planning. That's a way of evaluating it based on time that happened in the past. Health, state of being free from illness or injury. You could add more to that if you want to, spiritual health, other types of nutritional or, relational goals. But, this is the stricter definition, or just, the one that I think applies to all of us, because, unless you want illness or injury, we probably all agree that that's stuff we want to avoid. And then finally, wealth. And I really believe, and I love this definition of it, but I believe there's almost no definition of wealth. You can make your own, but I like this because it says plentiful supplies of a particular resource. And some people would look at things like love and be like, I'm a wealthy person, I don't need anything else. Other people define it all with money. Other people define it with, I have more. I know people, for example, who love living on a lake, and that's their definition of wealth, even though that house may or may not be as expensive as, a mansion in the suburbs or downtown Atlanta. So, there's a lot of different ways of looking at that, but I'm just going to assume building wealth and money for most of us is a good way to talk about it for this. So of these priorities, which is most important? And this is a little bit of a trick right now, but I do think that there is one that is most important. Would anybody like to guess and see if we're on the same page? I don't think there's a wrong answer, and I'm going to have to applaud Juliana. A is obviously time. B is health, nice working out cat, and C is absolutely wealth. I mean, look at Dave Chappelle stuffing those dollars down his shirt. Oh my goodness. Um, so with that, which do y'all think is most important? Anybody want to offer an answer or something in chat?
Tiffany said health.
Okay.
Well, I probably have to say same with health for me, at least, because I feel like without health, you don't really have anything.
So like you don't enjoy your time, for example.
Yeah, and even if you have as much money as possible, you can't take it with you to heaven, right? So,
Okay.
anybody else? Alrighty, I guess health.
All right. And I think that that is a fine answer. I was going to say to some degree, time because you can't get more of it, whereas you can get sick and healthy again. But I agree, they both are priceless assets. Now, of this, though, there's only, of the three, all are limited resources, right? But acquiring wealth is comparatively more accessible than health and time, which are invaluable. And once lost, they are irretrievable. So think about that. The people that are working at the expense of their health, are they really building a better quality of life, or are they, putting too much emphasis on wealth and not enough on health? Time, obviously, we all have things that we wish we could change in our past. Once that goes, it's there, it's written, and you pretty much have to accept the past for what it is. So because they're irretrievable, let's say those two are actually more important than wealth, which is a good way to keep our priorities straight. And then some equations for life. So manage health and wealth in a way that maximizes time. Think about that. So the one we're trying to maximize is time. So how are we spending our time? And then the vehicles to make our time enjoyable outside of, or health and wealth, really. Especially if you look at a Thanksgiving table like this or Christmas dinner like this. And, obviously the relationships around there are a form of health. And it's probably those two that are the hardest to reverse. I know recently just a very sad story of a family friend, not a client we've worked with, who, had all the money in the world, but was, just got a nasty cancer and it ended everything. So let's focus on time is what we're trying to spend. And then let's maximize that use for health and wealth. And quite frankly, the less time we spend building wealth, the more time we can spend on our health or other enjoyable things. And then there's a great equation here, and this is going to go when we relate time to wealth, that is basically a fool safe way of building wealth. To build wealth, follow the 80-10-10 rule. If this is done over time, it is almost impossible not to succeed. It's really true. Now, the problem is, and I'm sure a lot of you are closer to retirement, this rule only applies if you combine health and time, or wealth and time together. So what am I talking about when I say 80-10-10? Obviously you have taxes in here. And so I didn't want to, that's different for everybody, but let's just talk about the money that's either gross of taxes or leftover, depending on how you do these three buckets. But for the average person, I tell you what, you start working and somewhere in your 30s, 20s is even better, but in your 30s, you start creating a lifestyle where you live on 80% of your money, you invest 10% of it, and you give 10% of it. It's nearly impossible to not end up fine when you get to retirement. Now, the problem is many of us get to retirement not having done that throughout our lives. But if you do that, it makes wealth building very easily. And, once you get to a certain point where that ability to have time working on your side is gone, then we either have a problem or it's time to retire and start distributing this stuff. And then health, and I love this about this equation for successful health, because it really follows that of wealth, which is following a lifestyle rule. And what I mean by that is a long-term healthy lifestyle is often more important than short sprints. So if you actually look at, and I read an article recently on human longevity where they have these, they call them blue pockets, I believe, or blue something, but these places in the world that people just seem to live longer than other places. And surprisingly, one of them was actually in our country, somewhere in California, a lot in Asia, a couple in some other parts. But one of the things that they noticed in common is the people who have more of a lifestyle of success. So, they don't spend hours in the gym. They don't, try to run triathlons or anything. But what they do is instead of driving a car, they walk when they go to the market or to a friend's house. And almost everything they do starts with a walk. Diet wise, they eat, just a nice, healthy, balanced diet. Relationship wise, they actually, they have friends and relationships. And then back to the health, believe it or not, one of the things they do, and you can define this however you want. It doesn't have to include alcohol at all. And in fact, I think in a lot of ways it shouldn't for your health. But what it does, they tend to have a nighttime ritual and almost like a little happy hour where they have, one small drink or a glass of tea or something. But what they're really doing is sitting and peacefully connecting with other people while they do it, which is actually why some of those statistics can be a little misleading. But it's more of, if you actually look at what helps people live a long, successful lifestyle from a health standpoint, it is more of a ongoing lifestyle than some type of, I'm just going to turn this around and be a totally different person in a month or two. And I would say the same is true for your wealth. You follow the 80-10-10 rule, all of a sudden you're 60 years old and you got more than enough money without a problem to fix. Let's do that lifestyle wise. You're a heavy drinker and smoker up to your 60s, and then all of a sudden you stop, and now we can have some problems, even though, going forward you might not. So, thinking of those two and the way to build success in a similar manner, it's really worthwhile. So let's also continue on that idea, but on some parallels between wealth and health, talked about a good number of them. So both are necessary to plan for future success. And so here's an example I want to give, and I'm going to parallel eating broccoli, and I just use that for vegetables. And I know some people love vegetables. God bless you. Some people don't love vegetables, but we know fruits and vegetables are part of a healthy, balanced diet. An example could be paralleling eating broccoli or let's say vegetables to making an estate plan. With an estate plan, it's so hard to get people to do it because it's this thing out in the future. And that's where we also have a problem with our understanding of time, because we always want to do what's right for right now, and we feel like we can do the future tomorrow. Can't necessarily do that. And so what I try to do when we're doing a financial plan is help people simplify the process by choosing paths of least resistance, meaning, okay, ideally, you don't have an estate plan. Ideally, you should work with an attorney, but we're going to provide a resource through wealth.com that can at least generate sort of in a LegalZoom manner, plus with the interaction of an attorney in the future, or through the process, excuse me, and in the future if you need them for things like interpreting the documents if somebody passes away, get that to them. And why would you do that versus the professional attorney? Simply because it helps people get it done. It's not saying it's better, it just helps them get it done, So good example here is if you don't like broccoli, but you like Brussels sprouts, great, eat the Brussels sprouts. But it's not, if you don't like broccoli, let's eat ice cream. Same thing, if I don't like saving money, I got to automate it from my check, right? The path of least resistance. This is why people are way more successful at 401ks, because it just automatically comes out of their paycheck. If they deposited that money into their account, tried to budget for the month, and then put whatever's left over into their 401k, now we're going to have some problems for most people. Because once the money's in there, they spend it. It's more fun. But if they go ahead and just pull it out of the paycheck to begin with, it's amazing how much people say, I didn't even notice. See the parallels here? All right. So another trivia question. Juliana, would you like to read this for us?
Yes, I will. I hope you guys have been listening. I'm sure you have. You guys are very smart people, especially AT&T. I know the work is very hard. So I'm going to read the questions. There's 4 answers. David's going to be the person that kind of goes through the answers. After the last answer, whoever answers it right quickly will get a fun little gift card. So let's see if you've been listening, and I will read the question. If you know, go ahead. If you know it is time to invest in your health, which of these strategies will most likely help you achieve it? All right. A, going on a binge diet and trying to lose weight as quickly as possible. B, get a gym membership, use it a lot in January, and then stop going in February, which happens a lot. I
Yep.
see it. C, drinking and smoking. Or D, finding a physical activity you enjoy and doing it on a regular basis. Whew, these people are fast. Alrighty. Jaquay, I'm gonna hopefully I pronounced it. You answered it correctly, quickly. So you are the winner of the prize. So I will send you a $10 e-gift card after the event. So thanks for participating.
Right. All right. So let's just go through each of these and talk about them a little bit from what we've said here. I mean, obviously, you know, that's that get rich quick type mentality. I didn't save, I didn't follow the 80-10-10 rule. And so I just want to basically get a lottery ticket. Most of the time that doesn't work. Not saying it doesn't work 100% of the time, but your odds aren't good. Get a gym membership and use it a lot in January. I'm just going to make a confession because this is a temptation of mine every year, and I'm using this a little bit to prevent me from doing it. If you don't like going to the gym, don't do that. Because it's that lifestyle thing, right? Find something that works with your lifestyle. I mean, literally, some of those people in the blue areas, simple tasks like gardening, and just moving more, not being as sedentary during work. Sorry to say that to the AT&T folks that are in offices, but those types of things have really made a difference over time. Drinking and smoking, what could be a better lie to us when it comes to time? I mean, it is such a lie. When you think about it, will either drinking or smoking make today better? Probably. Can it make your future worse? Yes. And will it do it over time? Yes. And it can hurt both your health and your wealth. And then finally, obviously D is the right answer here. So, balancing those out. There we go. Look at that. Now we got a working out dog. So I have a question for you, Juliana. At this gym, do they let dogs and cats work out together, or do they have to stay separate?
So, unfortunately, my husband is weird and won't let me get an animal. So, my happiness is dogs and cats. And so I found these cute little animals doing workouts. So I was like, you know what, this makes me happy. So I'm sure they'll make other people happy. But I don't know how they got that dog to do it. But I'm sure there's gyms that will allow dogs if you really wanted to bring your dog sometimes, right? So, but that's that.
No. You didn't get the joke there, Juliana. I didn't say bring your dog to the gym. I'm saying, will they let the dog and the cat be in the same workout class together?
Oh, yeah, of course. They could be friends. You and I are friends. I'm a cat, you're a dog.
There you go. All right, cool. Actually, if you ever see a dog and cat play together, it's actually kind of fun. That you sometimes think that like they're wrestling and they aren't. So, all right, and now we have a similar one for wealth here. And hopefully y'all are finding this interesting and not just, too fluff, but, worthwhile for going into next year. So similarly, Juliana.
Alrighty. Similarly, if you know you need to be in a better track of wealth building, which of these strategies will give you the highest probability of success? A, take a high-paying job you hate even though it's bad for your health and terrible way to spend 60% of your time. B, trying to get rich quickly by adding uncalculated risk to your portfolio. C, follow the 80-10-10 rule over time and be patient. Or D, ignore your money and just assume that it'll work down the road. All right. I think the winner is Leslie. She's the first one that answered it quickly. I will give you a little bit of wiggle room because we do want it to wait until D's, but just because we, read the question quickly. But you win a $10 e-gift card. So congratulations.
Good job, Leslie. All right, let's do some Leslie. Okay, cool. Let's do some teaching off of all these. So first of all, that is a wealth building strategy. And you all know people that do this. They earn lots of money and they're miserable because they work nonstop. It's bad for their health. And on average, this is average, the average human being spends about 60% of their adult life working. That's the majority of your life. If you want to maximize your time that you have here on the planet, don't you think you should enjoy your work? And if you're not, don't you think we should find a way to change it or help you retire? Try to get rich quickly by adding uncalculated risk to your portfolio. Always a bad idea. If you take calculated risk, meaning, okay, I wish, and I'll give you all an example of a calculated risk. I know I'm 60 years old. I'm a little bit short on retirement funds. I know, David, you said the average retiree might have, and I'm just making this up because it is kind of just, back of the napkin on any individual that needs this, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. Okay. Well, if you're doing that for the average person my age, I'm a little behind the eight ball, and maybe a strategy we could use is, or actually, do you have any strategies we could use? Yeah, a strategy could be picking up more stocks. So even though it's not appropriate for most people, maybe we should have 80% of your money in stocks, because even if the market takes a downturn, we just have to work a little bit longer, And so what we're using now by working a little longer or giving the market time to come back is time on our side. Okay. But if it's not calculated, what happens? Let's say it goes like this. David, I know I'm behind the eight ball, but I heard, and I'm just saying this because I heard this about 2 years ago a lot, and I know a lot of you probably never did this, but I'm really interested in this cryptocurrency, and I hear that's the future, and I really just feel like I should take that. At that point, is that really a calculated risk? And is it just something you're kind of subconsciously searching for that lottery ticket in a sense? If it is calculated and you really understand what you're doing, great. If it's uncalculated, bad idea. I'll give you another example of uncalculated. You've worked your whole life at AT&T, and for whatever reason, you decide you want to go out and open a restaurant or, a business selling something. Well, you have no experience doing that. I'm not 100% sure you should expect success there when most businesses actually do fail. All right. So notice the calculated versus uncalculated. Calculated put time back on our side. And then C, obviously we know this works, but this is really what works when we still have the resources of time and health to make it work. Health so that you can do the work, and time so that all that can compound. And then obviously D doesn't work at all for money, and it also doesn't work for health. And I'll just do a shout out to the men here. I know men in their 40s and 50s tend to love to avoid doctors. That's kind of like ignoring your money. There can be a cancer that's growing and you don't know about it until it's too late. And that's why you at least pay a little bit of attention and get your, checkup on your finances every now and then. All right. I love this one. Gut funding. Do you know where they are, Juliana?
What?
Do you know what city they're in?
Iran. I don't know.
I have no idea.
Borat was my favorite movie, and I was like, hey, let's make some money and be happy.
Cool. I've never seen Borat. I might need to.
Oh boy. Make sure to have some beers next to you. It's a hoodie.
Do I need to make sure my kids aren't next to me?
Yes, definitely.
All right. So present versus future focus. And this is very important. And this goes so into investing. Now, the rest of this presentation is about to be a lot more financial than what y'all saying. We were kind of just setting the stage and also, talking about the philosophical layout of these three. But here's what's really hard for us to do is differentiate the difference between the present and the future and really balance those correctly, because the immediate actions impact our future health and wealth, but we often prioritize the present over the future. So a great example here is this financial goal of short-term goals versus long-term goals. Short-term goal is I'm 55 years old and I want this really nice, expensive car. A more prudent question is, I want this really expensive car. How will this impact my finances long-term? Okay. And so many of us, this is why we undersave. Or in retirement, this is why we overspend. You're in your 60s, you have the money, you can do it. Nothing's wrong with you doing it, but it's going to impact how much money's there when you're 80, 85, 90. And can you keep that focus? And guys, for the clients I've seen successful, financially, they usually think more longer term. Short term is important. You have to make sure the emergency fund and things like that are funded, but they aren't the type of people who the second they get inheritance, they go out and spend it. They think, how can this go for my long term? And the reason, when you think about this, our brains often favor short-term needs over long-term goals. And I will just say this as proof in this area when it comes to finances. I bet there's very few of you on this call that would doubt that the stock market's going to be higher than it is today at some point in the future. Please speak up if you think that's not a true statement. However, I do know this: when the market goes down, in the short term, people get scared. And the reason is, when the thing that mitigates risk is time, we often can't focus on that versus this immediate risk. And some of you who've been around for a while have heard me say this before. It's really because our brains, when you think about our risks in the past when our brains were developing, it was much more short term. You know, there's a tiger over there, I got to get away or else that tiger's going to eat me. Well, that's a different problem than the stock market went down, and if I just stay invested 2 years from now, I'm probably going to make out all those losses and more. See the difference? And we weren't wired that way. You know, it's also when you think of really successful business people. I mean, think about Amazon. This is, Amazon, I mean, a lot of the big, great companies, Amazon, Tesla are two great examples, but Amazon short term was never a good business for about the first 10 to 15 years. But Jeff Bezos had a vision on where it could go long term, and then it paid off very, very, very well. And we all know that. And so when you think that way, it can really be a little confusing, but important. And I would also say that the closer you get to retirement and in retirement, that actually tends to become a little bit easier just because you're not in the accumulation phase, but it's still important to keep that mindset. What I see happening different in retirement is, like, let's say we have an income bucket, which is funding your short-term goals, and a long-term bucket, which is funding your long-term goals, or meaning money you might not spend for 10 years or more. Well, you know, if markets go down and it's in that long-term bucket, it's not the same issue as if it's in that short-term bucket. And that's what I mean by differentiating these. If you look at it all as one big pot, a lot of times it can be scarier than when you see that there is a difference in that layout between the short-term needs and long-term goals. All right. So because we all love the short term, I thought I'd give a couple by the end of the year, and then talk a little bit about some tax planning, because everybody loves doing that at the end of the year. So, first of all, anytime you're thinking short-term goals, the number one that comes to me is having a lot of validity is always tax planning, because that really makes a difference what happens in calendar years. You know, as far as did the market go up 8% this year, or 15%, or down 10%, you know, that's relatively random over a 12-month time frame. What are the tax codes? You know what they are, and you have to do certain things like Roth conversions, charitable contributions, contributions to your retirement plans, RMDs, all these within a calendar year, whether that year be 2023 or 2024. I will say for tax planning, not just end of the year, a lot of times it's good to do the end of the year stuff earlier. Going into next year, we have a new tool we're going to be rolling out called Holistiplan. And what it really is some long-term tax analysis for people that help kind of really get in deeper than these. If we upload, it's beautiful AI where if we upload the tax returns, it'll give a lot of different, metrics of what happens in the future. And then we can run things like, all right, what if we pull this amount out for Roth conversion per year? Or what if we pull, X amount of dollars from this account and then this account? How does that affect your tax liability versus, all from the IRA? And then, of course, anytime you have debt involved, especially bad debt, I'm not talking a mortgage at 2.5% here. I'm talking, credit cards or something like that. Pay them off as fast as possible. That's always a very valuable short-term goal that can then impact your long-term planning by having more disposable income to eventually save and not losing money with reverse compounding, right? Einstein says the most powerful rule in the universe is compound interest. And it really is incredibly powerful. You don't want debt to compound you in the other way. So these are really kind of the short-term strategies I tried to do before the year end. There are short-term health strategies. As much as we talked about it being long-term, I mean, everybody, and I did not, and I'm just going to admit this, this is probably why I'm bringing up this topic right now. I did not personally get a physical this year, but I made sure I've already signed up for mine in January. That was a mistake, but it's something you can do every year, and that's short-term. Am I going to eat a lot different between now and then? No. But at least it checks on that stuff. Work on having better posture. No joke. It is amazing how much your posture impacts your health. And then certainly stress reduction techniques can very much so give you some short-term benefit. All right. And then as far as enjoying the present, and especially when you think about the holidays here, and Juliana, this is just a beautiful slide. I'm starting to think you need to have less alcohol in our presentations, but no, I'm just teasing with you. And animals. I think we figured out what Juliana likes here. But immediate time strategies. Remember, the most important moment you truly have is the present. And a lot of times, we let the past and the future interrupt that. And the reason I'm saying this is, let's say you're sitting down with us. We're helping you with your finances. The only thing we can help you do is make decisions that you can implement now and that will hopefully pay off in the future. I've seen people come in with guilt about mistakes in the past, anger about things in the past, and it sometimes being burned in the past by a bad investment, whether it was, .com stock or 2008. But don't let that impact your decision making today. And then you look at these folks here enjoying their family. I mean, just every moment you have with your family and loved ones, make sure you cherish it. I know for myself, I tend to have, and I'll just give an example on that I'm working on myself. I tend to have more of a future vision, which I think is pretty normal for financial advisors, but I have this awful tendency sometimes of whenever I'm on like a vacation or an event, I already start thinking about what is the next vacation and the next event going to be and what's that going to look like. And when I do that, what it's really creating is me not enjoying that one that I've already put the work into and paid to be at and, spending that time. So. Hope this has been a good use of y'all's 35 minutes. Also, and we'll stay on, we can ask questions and talk about anything y'all want to, but let's just do a little conclusion here. Truly, I believe health and time are your most limited and precious resources. Most of the time, and we all have, a relationship with money. Some of us don't care enough about it. Some of us are nice and balanced. Some of us obsess over it. But remember, these other two are more precious. And the money, its role should really be to help those other two, stay healthy and enjoy the time you spend. Wealth management should embrace your quality of life. That's a lot of what we talked about today is really the quality of life. And then, of course, strive for a balance between short-term necessities and long-term goals. And I will say I've talked a lot about long-term finances. I've also seen, and I'll give you two what I consider just massive examples of misunderstanding on this last thing here, where it says strive for balance between short-term necessities and long-term goals. I had a person one time, not somebody we worked together with, but somebody I did talk to and at least one meeting. They were younger and in their 30s, and they were literally waiting until they had around $500,000 saved before they thought they could have children. That probably was putting too much value on the money because, I know and several other people know how hard it can be to have kids. And the other thing I know is, having kids at a younger age is a lot different than having kids at an older age. So why are we putting so much value on the wealth and basically destroying what could be the biggest blessing of your life if you just focus on that? All right, we do this in the short term. Maybe we don't save as much as we want, but on the back end, we can go towards that long-term goal. And that's what I mean by balance. And Dave Ramsey's another great example. He will say, and I say this with the caveat, a lot of the people he is talking to go back a few slides, which is folks with a debt problem. And if you're paying off debt, rice and beans and living a life like no other now so that later on you can live a life like no other makes a lot of sense. There's this huge movement in the millennials, and I'm not 100% sure why they do this, but they want to save as much money as possible and then retire at like 35. What are you going to do for the rest of your life? I mean, is that really balanced, or is having an even lifestyle throughout your life, more beneficial? So with that, I will open up to any thoughts and questions. It can be on anything at all. It can totally be something different than anything we discussed. And what I'm really looking for here is just, what's on your mind.